Hello everybody. As we seem to be currently living through a somewhat dystopian period, I suspect many of you are looking for an escape from the harsh reality of lockdown. What better then than a good read? My recently published novel, The Return of the Black Magician, available at Amazon and at www.hive.co.uk and other places, is the disturbing tale of a merciless and malevolent megalomaniac who sets about establishing a self-governing quasi-medieval state in the Lancashire town of Ormskirk. Inevitably, the consequences are dire. Step forward an audacious team of inconsistent and frequently inept insurgents who plan his overthrow. I shall now read a short extract which describes the tangible changes taking place in and around Ormskirk as the policies of the new regime are enacted. Life continued much as normal at first. Poffel continued to sit each week on the bench of Ormskirk Magistrates' Court. Nothing unusual was noticed until one day the lion and unicorn supporting the crown and coat of arms that had been above the bench since time immemorial was replaced by a skull. Then the sentences became somewhat more unusual. A gossip was put in an iron mask, a thief was put in the stocks, a receiver of stolen goods was put in the pillory, and so on. Radical though these changes were, there was no outcry, for the changes were gradual and subtle, so subtle that people did not notice them but accepted the individual minor variation until it deposed the old method or belief in the mind. All over the district were these minor adjustments taking place, such a tiny brick in the construction of a huge and fearful edifice. Candles and oil lamps now glowed in windows. Water was drawn from the wells, meat was scorched on wood stoves. Tractors no longer chugged over fields, lorries no longer drove through the towns and villages. Both had been replaced, locally at least, by the horse. Bookshops closed for want of business, and the library burnt down one sunny afternoon in mysterious circumstances, consuming not only the books, but the librarian as well. No one was ever apprehended for this and other crimes of arson, which had become increasingly commonplace, even though a certain Mr. Noah Half-Moon was rumoured to have been in the vicinity at the time. Other bookshops opened, but those that stayed in business sold books of strange character, dealing in matters long thought forgotten. Yet what was worst was the shifting of the people. They had become blind to the subtle changes going on about them, yet more myopic still were they when it came to the changes in their own personalities. From being indifferent to strangers, they became actively hostile to anyone from beyond their pale. And strangers became far easier to spot, notwithstanding the examples of technology they carried about their person, for the locals now began to dress in austere manner, as if from some evil and ignorant age long past. Black or brown costumes were almost mandatory, together with flowing cape and broad-brimmed hat. One merchant told an indifferent outside world of how he had been chased out of town by a frenzied mob because he tried to sell cheap electrical goods. Another was stoned and had to be hospitalized after this or another mob had discovered him trying to sell frivolous garments. But by and large, the outside world took no notice of such things. The town of Ormskirk, and to some extent the surrounding villages, had always been considered strange and backward places, though it must be said that because of their very isolation, the outside world thought but little upon these localities. By indifference they had been let go their own way. Even when the stories began to percolate through to the outside world, these tales of violence, ignorance, hinted atrocity, the rest of the country bestirred itself to say an irritable "so what" before turning itself to the sports page. Then, when the stories, all stories, stopped coming out from this strange region entirely, as if the district had been annihilated or an absolute censorship imposed, the world ignored the implications, satisfied that this best forgotten part of the world had returned to its customary anonymity. After all, was it not now embracing the very tenacious independence so beloved of certain politicians, journalists and literati in almost every region? But one person was gravely affected by the news, and that story is about to be told.